Support for Arkansas Week provided by the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, the Arkansas Times, and KUAR-FM 89.
And hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us. The latest on Arkansas and the Omicron variant a bit later in the broadcast. First, the political landscape. Almost a quarter of the Senate's 35 seats will be up for grabs this year. How that could affect our politics in the near term and some other political musings now from three guys you've seen here before. Michael Cook, than whom there is no bluer. Bill Vickery, rumored to be crimson to the core, and Andrew DeMillo, who, as Capitol Bureau Chief of the Associated Press, is professionally colorless, if heartily bland. Gentlemen, thanks for coming aboard. Let's start with the Arkansas Senate. Bill Vickery, I mean, there's a lot going on there. I think 8, maybe 9 seats in play.
Yeah, you're exactly correct. I mean, to see an open state Senate seat is like a Bigfoot sighting. It's very rare. You don't know if it actually is going to happen. You got to confirm that. You see both Democrats and Republicans alike choosing to step aside. Some are term limited, like Senator Bledsoe. Others, as we've seen from Senator Garner or Senator Ingram, have decided that they want to pursue other issues in life. And so it is very rare. This is, and I think I might be right in saying that minus term limits, we're in a really rare position where we may see the most turnover in the state Senate that we've seen in my lifetime, and maybe the last 60 or 70 years.
Yeah, certainly under these circumstances. Michael Cook, yeah.
It'll be a big turnover. As you mentioned, all 35 seats are going to be open because of redistricting,
right?
Plus the number of people who are leaving because of, as you mentioned, term limits. On the Democratic side, we're losing 3 great people due to term limits or choosing not to run again. The minority leader, Senator Keith Ingram, State Senator Larry Teague, and State Senator Joyce Elliott. Between the 3 of those elected officials, the decades and decades of experience and institutional knowledge of getting things done there at the state capitol, unfortunately, is going to be lost, which I think is sad for all Arkansans, because those 3 people really worked hard and did all they could to better the lives of all Arkansans.
Yeah, one of the interesting things, too, about this, Andrew DeMillo, is that all 3 of those Democrats that Michael Cook just mentioned were fairly adept at crossing the aisle there and working with Republican lawmakers.
Yeah, that's true. These exits really have the potential for just dramatically changing the dynamics in the Senate, especially for Democrats. Democrats don't really have the numbers in the legislature right now, and the way things are going, they're not going to. But what they did have is they did have some members like Senator Ingram, like Senator Elliott, who had some institutional knowledge, who knew the process and knew the history around the way the Senate had worked, the way around the state budget. Senator Teague's another example. And they're going to be losing that, and that's it's going to be interesting to see how do Democrats maneuver now without those voices and without that experience.
Interesting, also, in to what extent the temperature, the ideological temperature of the Senate is likely to change. Bill?
Yeah, I mean, I actually think I'm very optimistic. I think you're going to see the Senate work very well together going forward. You always do lament losing people who have served with honor and distinction. I think we've mentioned some folks who have fallen on the D side of the aisle that have served very honorably and with great distinction. I might disagree with their political philosophy, but their intent and their desire to help Arkansas was never questioned. We're losing some on the Republican side as well, too. But I tend to think you're seeing the Senate as an institution. While there's going to be a big turnover, I think there's a developing cohesiveness inside the Senate that will probably serve the state well in the 23 legislative session and on into 25. I'm bullish. I'm optimistic on this Senate being able to work well together.
Cohesion in what sense? Follow up on that, Bill, because I had some members telling me it's treacherous on the Senate floor.
But that is as a result today. But we're talking about projecting ahead with some new members. And when you have that big a turnover, when you've got almost a third of the Senate changing hands, there's naturally sort of a go slow approach for a lot of these folks. And I just think at the end of the day, what you're going to see is some House members become state senators, and you do see from a leadership standpoint, I think you see the Republican leaders at least wanting to engage and work with Democrats and wanting to be sort of a get things done coalition moving forward. I do think it's not cohesion, Steve, in the sense of being told what to do, but sort of a real a sense of working together.
Yeah, Michael Cook.
I don't quite see that happening. The Senate is losing, two blustery politicians with Jason Rayford and Trent Garner opting not to run for re-election. Those two gentlemen have a long history of just blustering and bullying in the state Senate. However, I think, it's a new day for a new way of doing for Republican politics, both in Arkansas and in general. I think in the upcoming session, we'll see more of these kind of culture war issues that have come to bear. The leadership may be one way, but then I think a lot of the rank and file Republicans will be on another. I don't see much more cohesion and working together, at least on the Republican side. As we all know, there are different factions of people who like to all snipe at each other behind the scenes, and there's the hot upcoming president pro tem race with 3 state senators vying for that seat, Republican state senators vying for that. So I just don't see much more cohesion and cooperation coming from the state Senate.
Yeah, well, speaking of 3-man races, Andrew DeMillo, there's another one underway, Senate race up in northwest Arkansas, where Mr. Ballinger now has, if I at last report, 2 opponents in the primary, I mean.
Yeah, that's correct, and this could end up being a pretty interesting race. Senator Ballinger has been one of those figures that's been willing to take on Governor Hutchinson on some issues, has been very outspoken on things like opposition to vaccine mandates and other safety measures that have been taken because of the pandemic. And has also been very outspoken on social issues and a lot of these culture wars issues that we've talked about before. I guess the big question will be in that district, is that district still embracing that, or is there, are they open to some moderation on that? Is there any kind of blowback? And we could, get a better sense of that from this primary.
Well, also, Bill Vickery, back to you. We just concluded a Republican senatorial primary up there to succeed Mr. Eads, and it appears that the 2 leading candidates, anyway, were pretty much what used to be called Main Street Republicans. The hot-button cultural issues didn't really enter into that race, at least in the runoff.
Yeah, and I think it also helps. Both of those guys were very well known, entrenched. They've been in the community for a very long time, and that's why I see people tend to vote for people, and I believe that's really what won out there. Is you've got some folks who really have been in that community for some time and were well known and well established, and that carries the day, I think, more than negative campaigning against a figure like that. But I want to go back, if I can, Steve, real quickly about what Andrew was saying about the culture war issue. I mean, to some degree, there is a fissure inside the Republican Party nationally, and you've seen it playing out here, where the more populist Trump wing of the party versus the old sort of Reagan sense of conservatism, limited government, battling it out a little bit. And those culture war issues are the ones with which you see it manifested. It will be interesting to see the campaigns that are run and the style of campaigns and what the issues are. Because the one thing I know is us opinion leaders in Little Rock get it wrong more often than we get it right when we try to project ahead for what, say, Senator Ballinger's district will do.
Well, I never thought I would see, and some other people concur, see a time when Republican members of the General Assembly, including the Senate, would basically tell the Arkansas State Chamber to go take a hike, and Walmart to get off my phone.
Yeah. But there again,
when Senator Trent Garner resigning, taking pot shots at Governor Asa Hutchinson, I can't think of a previous time where a retiring state senator just out and attacked the governor of his own party. I've never seen anything like that. So that's let's go to the incumbent for just a second. We had budget hearings are now underway. The administration unveiled its budget, about a $6 billion spending plan. This is likely to be Mr. Hutchinson's last session, absent a special session. Bill Vickery.
I think he's looking to wrap up a lot of issues. He wants to tie some stuff up in bows. He's had an incredibly successful 8-year run as governor. You look at where we are, the things he wanted to accomplish, he accomplished in especially in terms of taxes, business recruitment, where the state stands now in terms of our posture toward the business community. In a time of upheaval, Arkansas, along with a few other states, is finally that sort of beacon that a business can cling to. And I think you're going to see a lot of the work that he's done and the successes he's had pay off over the next 2 decades.
Andrew DeMillo, do you have a sense of the session to come?
Not yet. Other than the governor's budget proposal, there are very few surprises in it. About a 3.3% increase in spending. The big unknown is going to be, can they keep it limited? Traditionally, fiscal sessions have been focused on the budget, but as we saw with special session, there may be an appetite among some Republicans to try to expand that. With a 2/3 vote, they could take up other issues. So we could see another push for these culture war areas. The critical race theory, abortion, and fights over vaccines again. So there may be more opportunities for doing that than we saw during the special session. So that's really the big unknown.
We will continue to watch it, and you guys will be back, Messieurs Cook, Vickery, and DeMillo. Thanks. See you next time. We'll be right back. And now to COVID. There seems no stopping it, this new variant, a wildfire that is stressing the Arkansas healthcare system at a near unprecedented rate. The state is anticipating tens of thousands of home COVID test kits, about which we will now try to provide some guidance. We're joined by Dr. Naveen Patil, Medical Director of the Infectious Disease Bureau at the State Health Department, and Dr. Joe Thompson, the CEO of the Arkansas Center for Health Improvement. You will notice that we are all now wearing masks, because Dr. Thompson is in the studio, unlike our guests in the previous segment, and Dr. Patil is not alone in his studio at the medical center. So that's a bit of explanatory journalism there. Here's some more. Dr. Patil, we'll start with you. Hundreds of millions, really, of tests are soon going to be available, we hope. But there are two kinds. What's the basic difference here? What do we need to know about that?
So the test kits that's procured by Arkansas, we are supposed to get 1.5 million, and I think we received about 250,000 tests this past week, which has all been taken up by our citizens. So the tests that are being supplied are the rapid antigen tests. So basically, we have 2 types of COVID tests. One is the molecular test, also known as PCR or NAT, and the antigen test. So the PCR tests are very sensitive. It detects viral genetic material, which is the RNA in the test. So it can be very, very sensitive. It's also very specific for COVID. So, and usually most of the PCR tests, except for 1 or 2, take a longer time for results to come back. Usually it's 6 to 8 hours, but with the lab waiting period, it can be 24 to 48 hours. So they are very, very sensitive and specific, but can take longer. The rapid tests, which are mostly the antigen tests, detect, proteins on the surface of the virus. They are very fast to do, usually 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, depending on the type of test. They are not all that sensitive, but they are specific to COVID. So when I mean sensitive, means it can miss some of the cases. So that's the difference. But the utility is you can do it at home in doctor's office, and it's pretty rapid, 15 to 30 minutes. So those are the 2 main types of tests.
We're going to get a demonstration here in just a second. I'll pause for some figures. For the benefit of our audience, we're taping our broadcast at mid-morning on Friday with some very uncomfortable, unpleasant records having just been set. 13,000 new cases diagnosed in Arkansas only yesterday, which takes us to about 80,000 active cases. We're now, in less than 2 years, almost 9,400 deaths. In the public prints this morning, Dr. Joe Thompson, this goes to the matter of testing, or to both doctors. Hospitals, particularly in vaccine-resistant states, including Arkansas, almost at the snapping point.
You know, Steve, that 13,000 number is a dramatic undercount. That really is mostly the PCR test. It does not count most of the home tests that people have that we've put out into the community. So this really is an exponential increase. This Omicron variant is 3 to 4 times more infectious than the Delta variant, and it was twice as infectious as the parent variant. So it really is raging uncontrolled throughout our communities.
And there is a certain fatalism sets in. People have heard, well, it is milder than the Delta variant.
It does not appear to cause the lower respiratory pneumonias as often, and therefore people don't need to be placed on ventilators with the long-term sequelae from those. However, for individuals that are not vaccinated or those that got their vaccines last year and have not been boosted, it does represent a significant clinical risk, and we do have people, particularly those with comorbidities, that are having a hard time with this variant.
Dr. Patil, how do we get a test? Is this reimbursable? What, from that standpoint?
So these tests are that is being distributed by the state are available in all the local health units that are present in every county of the state, and also the local libraries. So we had ordered 1.5 million. So we have received about 250,000. We are supposed to be receiving them every few days. So as they come, they will be distributed and the public will be informed. The list of facilities are on the ADH website, and I also think it's on the governor's website. So these tests are provided for free to you. So every person can get one packet, which has 2 tests, and a family can get up to 3 packets, which is 6 tests. These are not reimbursable because these are provided for free. But recently, there were guidelines set forth by the Biden administration where insurance companies, if you are insured, the insurance companies will provide for 8 tests a month for each insured person to be reimbursed. So basically, this is apart from any other test that's performed in a hospital or a clinic or other things. So if you need 12 tests, 4 or 5 are performed in a doctor's office or a hospital, you can still get 8 over-the-counter at-home tests for each insured person. And it all depends on how your insurance company is contracted with the pharmacy. Either the pharmacy will dispense it for free to you, or you may have to pay it and then submit for a claim to the insurance company. Usually the reimbursement is about $12 per test. So if you're taking 8 tests a month, you might get up to $96 from the insurance company.
And I would direct the audience's attention to the bar across the bottom of our screen. It's a Arkansas Health Department website where all sorts of additional information can be obtained about the test, about COVID, and what else we need to know on a very updated basis, very daily, hourly even basis. How often, Dr. Thompson, should we test?
Well, I think testing is based upon whether you are symptomatic and you want to know, or whether you have been exposed and you want to safeguard yourself and the rest of your family. Dr. Patil mentioned the sensitivity and specificity. The PCR test is very, very accurate. It just takes a couple of days to get back now because of the lines that you see people waiting in and the laboratory time. The rapid test, if it's positive, you're positive. That's the specificity. But if it's negative and you're symptomatic, it could be a false negative. So if you are symptomatic today with the spread of this Omicron, I think you assume you have Omicron and safeguard your family if possible.
What if it does come back positive? Then what?
So the CDC guidelines now have changed because of the infectiousness of this virus. If it comes back positive, you should enter into a 10-day period, minimum 10-day period, where you are trying to isolate yourself and not affect others. Now, 5 days required isolation. If you're an essential worker and must get out, our healthcare workers, our frontline first responders and others, you can come out of that isolation if you commit to wearing a mask while you're out and about throughout the next 5 days.
If the symptoms worsen, I mean, what is it, to your GP, to the ER? What do we need to do?
Well, and let me just caveat, that coming out in 5 days assumes your symptoms have abated, that you don't have fever. If you continue to have significant symptoms, if you have any fever in the 24-hour period, you should not come out of isolation. And some people are having to go a longer period of time than the 5 days. But if your symptoms are worsening, I think the important thing is to call so that you quickly get to the place that you need to be. If you have a primary care provider, make that phone call. If you don't have a primary care provider, most hospitals now have a hotline for COVID responses that you can call and seek guidance on where to get care.
Okay, about the test. Now, some participatory journalism here. Doctors,
Steve, let me just, I apologize. If you want a test, don't go to the emergency room. We do not want people going to the emergency room for tests.
Jamming it up.
Jamming it up. Our emergency rooms are really overwhelmed right now with sick people. And if you need a test, that's why the health department and others are making these distribution sites at libraries, the health units, other places across the state.
Yours truly now is going to unmask for some demonstration here, and our two doctors are going to walk me through this. All right, here's the kit, which I think the cover you have already seen. Now, Dr. Thompson, what do I need to do?
Okay, the first and most important thing is you pull out the instructions.
All right.
You pull out the instructions and you read the instructions. Now, you and I have already done that, but before people start taking the test, make sure you understand the instructions. There are 3 components that you're going to need. You're going to need a swab, and you're going to need one of these vials,
all right,
and you're going to need your test kit. So with the swab, you'll take the swab out, and I would get all 3 of the things close to you so you're not having to reach and drop and maneuver too much.
All right.
So you've got the swab. Get your vial.
Vial.
And I would keep hold of the swab so you don't contaminate it with anything. There you go.
All right.
And then your test kit.
The test kit.
The test kit there.
Here.
Right. All right. So you're going to take, don't undo it yet.
All right.
All right. You're going to
we swab.
You swab first. You're going to stick that about 3/4 of an inch up into your nostril, first on one side, and you're going to swirl it around 5 times, and then on the other side, you're going to swirl it around 5 times.
There's no elegant way to do this.
No, there's not, and you got to go a little farther. This is not as difficult as the PCR, but you want to get a good specimen so that you know it.
Now the other.
Now the other side.
This is not that bad.
It's not. It is doable. All right.
I don't want to do it every moment, but it's
now
not that
hold on to your swab, and you want to untwist not the white part, but the orange part on the other. There you go. Now you want to put the swab down into the vial, and you're going to swirl it 15 times. This is to transfer your material into the vial to be able to put it in the test. So 15 times swirling it around.
11, 12. 15.
All right, now you can take the swab out and discard the swab. You're not going to use it anymore. So toss it. Put the top back on. Swirl it. There you go. Make it tight. Now then I'd shake it just a little bit to get up, and you can squeeze the side a little bit just to make sure that your stuff is all done in. Now you're going to, at the top of what is in your hand, the small white piece, that will untwist now and come off. So you take that small white piece and you untwist it.
If the guys get a better shot of this.
All right, now this is a dropper. So this is now the dropper, and you're going to take your test kit, and on the test kit there is a place that says put 3 drops here. I would put it down flat on the surface.
All right, let's try this.
And you're going to put 3 drops in that location that says 3 drops here.
1, 2, 3.
And that starts a 15-minute time. I think you should look at your watch, look at a clock, see what time it is.
All right.
What happens is that liquid moves across this test strip over the next 15 minutes.
All right.
And the test strip is going to give us 2 results. If the test is a successful test, meaning the test worked correctly, you will see a line that appears underneath the C that you see now on the screen.
Okay.
If you see a line, and you need to make sure there is a line under the C so that you know that the test worked correctly. If you see a line under the T, the test line, that means that you are positive for the antigens of COVID-19 and that you likely have COVID-19.
Under the T?
Under the T.
Okay.
So if you have 2 lines, a C and a T, you go into isolation.
Okay. And again.
Dr. Patil, did we get that correct?
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's right. And again, if you have to have 2 lines for it to be positive, if there are no lines or the C line doesn't show up and only the T line shows up, that's an invalid test. So for a positive test, you have to have both the C and T lines, two lines, just like a pregnancy test. And if it is negative, only the C line will light up. And the instructions are pretty clear on the box. And also, we need to make sure that you test at the correct and accurate time. I would like to give an example, if you may. Say, for example, Dr. Thompson and Steve, you are in the studio, and rare chance one of you is positive, and so the other person has been exposed now. So you don't go home and test immediately, because you just been exposed in the last 10-15 minutes. Your test is not going to be positive within that. You wait for a couple of days. So you've been exposed today, you come to know your coworker is positive, and the only time you had exposure to him was this morning or this afternoon. You don't go back home. If you've been exposed for the last 2-3 days continuously, and that's a different matter. But only one-time exposure, you go home, wait for 2-3 days to do your test, unless you become symptomatic. With Omicron, we are having people become symptomatic within 1 or 2 days in many instances after exposure. But if you're not symptomatic, you can wait up to 2 or 3 days to do your first test. And you have 2 test kits. So if it is negative the first time, you can repeat the test after another couple of days on day 5 after exposure. And if you are negative, most likely you are negative, and maybe you were protected by your vaccine or by your mask or whatever.
Well, I have to thank our 2 doctors because we're simply out of time. To the audience, I would it tickled, it didn't hurt, and it's essential. Dr. Patil and Dr. Thompson, thank you so much for coming in. Thank you. The results next week. See you then.
Support for Arkansas Week provided by the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, the Arkansas Times, and KUAR-FM 89.